Hello, it's time to get the Broadbeans started. This year I'm going for the giant exhibition long pod Broadbean. It says to sow them between February and April. What I'm going to do first though is soak them in a jar, one of these kilner jars here, and most people soak them for 24 hours. I leave them in the jar myself until I actually see the sprout coming out of the individual bean itself, and then I go ahead and plant those in the pots. Anyhow, let's get this stage of the process underway. Straight away I can see there are two dodgy beans here. These two, they seem to have been chopped in half, so I will discard these and soak the rest of these now. Like I said, I'll let those soak now over the next couple of days, and I'll wait for the shoot to emerge from the shell of the broad bean itself. I don't know what this fella's doing. It seems to be floating on top. I don't know whether that's a good sign or a bad sign. It doesn't really matter. Like I said, the majority of those will sprout. This is not going to be a 24-hour thing. It's going to be a couple of days. I'll get back to you, like I said, in a couple of days and show you how they are progressing. Okay, it's 9 days later. Let's see how the broad beans are doing. You'll remember I soaked them in the water in this kilner jar, like I said, 9 days ago, and I don't know if you can make that out very well. Most of them have chitted in the water. So what I'm going to do is empty this and plant them up. What I did do at the same time as soaking those broad beans was plant one up in this plastic container here, and as you can see, the shoot, or the root, the radical as it's actually known, has emerged from this particular bean and is making its way downwards. And what we'll do is we'll chart the progress of this and see the different stages of growth as it develops in this little container, so we get to see what goes on under the soil itself. Okay, what I've done is filled this 9cm pot up with multi-purpose compost. I've got my broad bean there. There are two ends to the broad bean. One end has a scar on it, so I don't know if you can see that, and then the other end is blunt. What you want to do is plant your broad bean, where are we? There we are, scar facing down, because that radical there, that little shoot, is actually the root, and like we saw in that plastic container, it heads down and then the shoot emerges from the side here and becomes the actual plant we see above ground. Anyhow, all I'm doing is poking a hole in the compost, covering it up. I'll water it in and then just repeat the process with the rest of those broad beans there. 34 broad beans sown into their individual pots. I've got to water them in, like I said, and we shall return to them in a couple of days once they've broken the surface. I planted out 34 seeds. 26 germinated. I had 8 misfires. You can see one right there. And most of these seedlings now are big enough to be taken up to the plot and planted out. The reason I planted out my seedlings in pots first rather than direct sow them is because I've got mice up at the plot, and can guarantee if I direct sow the seeds, the very next day the mice will have taken them and I'll have to start all over again. If you don't have mice up at your plots or in your gardens, then you can skip this stage and just direct sow the seeds. Just before we go up to the plot, let me show you what happened to the bean in the little plastic container. There you go. Let's try and get the glare off it. It basically just rotted in the soil, or just didn't develop. So obviously I won't be able to show you what went on in the soil, but I will put a link to a video that I did last year when this little experiment actually did work, and you'll be able to check out how the bean developed under the soil. Anyway, let's get and plant those broad beans. I'm not too fussed on precision. On my plots, I just like to get the plants in. But if you do want to plant them in nice, neat rows, then 6 inches apart and 6 inches between each row will do. Okay, 3 rows just planted out. You may be able to see 3 rows at the back there that are slightly more advanced. Well, I grew those on. They're about a month further on than these ones that I've just planted. Now then, I'm not going to cover these plants because rabbits don't seem to touch them. The mice won't touch them now that they are at this stage. But what will attack them is pea and bean weevil. It's this little weevil stroke beetle that chews U-shaped notches in the side of the leaves. There's nothing much that you can do about it. The plant tends to outgrow the attack and doesn't suffer too much. So we will continue to chart the progress over the coming months. All that remains for me to do now is to water in the new set of broad beans. Okay, let's have a broad bean update, shall we? In the last video, when we came up here and planted them out, I mentioned that some of these may get attacked by the pea and bean weevil. And looking at it, there's a bit of damage to the leaves. You can see those U-shaped notches that have been chiseled out the side of the leaves there, but it's not too bad this year, to be honest. But what I've just noticed, and I deliberately let it happen just to show you guys what is the bane of all broad bean growers. That's black fly. And black fly needs to be dealt with swiftly. You can hope that ladybirds tackle the black fly, which they do. As you can see, this one is on this plant, and just below it is a load of black fly. So that's an organic method for tackling these pests. But a lot of the time I just try and squish them on the plant. The best bet now, oh, there we go. There's another ladybird. The thing to do now is to pinch out the growing tips of all of these broad beans, which will discourage the black fly from feeding on them, because they like the tips for some reason. So that's what I'll do. I'll pinch out all these growing tips. Do you see that ant That ant is actively farming blackfly. What he does is he looks for blackfly and farms them for their sap that they secrete. So ants are kind of, yeah, blackfly farmers. It's the 6th of July and I reckon I can start picking some of the Broadbeans here. They're all at different stages, some big, some smaller, but I reckon they are ready. At the moment I'm just picking the obvious big bean pods that are on the outer edge of the bean plants themselves, and we'll progress inwards as the weeks go by. There's a big one. There's another one just here. These are perfect as a first picking of the season. Let me break into this one here. Wow, juicy. Open it up for you. Just pick out that one there because he seemed eager to get out. Give it a try. It's quite sweet. If you've never grown Broadbeans before, take that one. You can see they're kind of housed in a furry bean pod. Well, I hope somebody in the garden community has enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you've never grown Broadbeans before, give them a go. Like I've said before, you may be surprised. They are fairly easy. You just got to watch out for the black fly, and that's about it really. Just keep them well watered and they'll grow. It's that simple. Anyhow, thanks for watching. If you have, remember to hit that like button, share, subscribe, but most importantly, please do comment down below. And until the next video, bye for now.